Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a good weekend. Nice sunny day here that I'm enjoying. Alrighty, so we see that Kiely Rodni's death was ruled an accidental drowning. And as we've known since her recovery, her body was found in the cargo area of her vehicle. Now, we received the autopsy and pathology report from Nevada and Placer counties. We've seen it was deemed an accidental drowning. And we've also seen that she must have drowned on air because there was no water in her stomach at all, and just a trace amount of seepage into her lungs as a result of her sitting in the water for 2 weeks. Now, common sense tells us that there's no way possible that this was a drowning. How can anyone say she drowned when there's no water filling the lungs and stomach? It's impossible. Now, in this video, I want us to take a look at this and see if the results of the autopsy and pathology reports jive with the facts in this case, as well as with common sense. Now, first of all, I posted a link to a video I watched this morning of DutyRon's and Ed Wallace's evaluation of the autopsy report. And I encourage you to watch their video. I posted it, like I said, in the description. I want you to watch it because it really sheds a lot of light on this report that's come out. Now, I'm going to go over some of what they said, but I suggest you go watch the whole video as it's very enlightening. And I also think it shows that this whole autopsy and pathology report omits some very pertinent information and totally ignores information they could have easily obtained. And I'll be up front right now. I believe this whole thing is a complete joke, hands down. Now, if you really believe that this was just an accident, my personal opinion is you're simply closing your eyes to the truth. There's absolutely no way, and I mean no way, that we can look at the evidence and say that this was just an accident. No way. Now, again, I encourage you, if you haven't already, watch DutyRon's video before you start coming in here trolling with your predetermined bias, ignoring the facts, all right? I know there's going to be people that do it. But, like I say, you're just ignoring facts. Now, let me start out sharing some quotes and other info from DutyRon's video. Again, go watch the whole thing, because I'm just going to cover a few things from that video, and there's a whole lot more information that, for brevity's sake, I'm not going to get into. There's no sense duplicating what they've already covered. I just want to cover a few main points here. Now, Ed Wallace says this. He says, this observation that's found in the report is by the deputy coroner at the scene examining the position of our victim here after the car has been flipped and pulled out of the water. It's not the position that she was in the water when the car was upside down. And there's no information about that. And in the deputy coroner's death scene report, it makes no mention of them taking their own independent photographs. All they talk about is that there's a supplemental set of photographs in a report taken by the sheriff's office crime scene people. And I don't understand it because the jurisdiction of that body, although it's the same agency, it's the deputy coroner's job to take pictures of that body as they find the body. In other words, as it was underwater before they flipped it over. All right. Now, he went on to say that the scene underwater is no different than a crime scene on land, and that you have to handle the scene underwater the same as you would handle a crime scene above ground. Pictures should have been taken, evidence should have been gathered, the same as a normal crime scene on the ground, which we know they did not. And he said an underwater camera should have been taken down to the vehicle before it was even moved. And that you do the same forensic photography underwater as you would a crime scene on land. Now, DutyRon then asked Ed why that information was left out of the report. Ed said that the scene wasn't handled as a crime scene and that they didn't follow the basic forensic standards of underwater recovery. And I don't know if you remember some of my prior videos, I've been saying this very thing the whole time, that they did not handle it as a crime scene. He said that obviously they didn't take any documentation. They didn't do any secondary dives once the vehicle was removed because they didn't go back into the water and collect all the things that fell out of the vehicle once they flipped it and broke the window and the mirror. Now, one interesting thing that Ed points out is how the pathologist contradicts his or herself. The first statement is that the body could not be identified due to decomposition. But then, later in the report, says that the body was identified by the deputy coroner, not the family, which is always the procedure unless there's no family member available to do so. Now, there may be some isolated cases, but for the most part, that's basic procedure. You have it identified by the family. So, if the face was unrecognizable because of decomposition, I find it virtually impossible that the deputy could make a verifiable identification. How does that happen? Things that make you go, Ed asks, he says, how did they do that? Speaking of identifying the body. He said fingerprints weren't available due to decomposition. There's no mention of DNA. There's no mention of dental records. There's a box on the report that says they don't know who her dentist is. What? Seriously? Hey, look, man, this is not Los Angeles or even San Francisco or Sacramento. This is small Truckee, California. Less than 17,000 people. Now, in the days between recovering the body and doing the pathology, you couldn't ask Kiely's parents who her dentist was so you could compare dental records? How the hell do you explain that? One phone call and you could have found that out. And then one more phone call to request those records from the dental office. You mean to tell me that this girl is 16 years old and she's never been to a dentist? Oh man, get real. Who are you fooling? Not us. Now Ed goes on to say, even if the deputy was able to recognize the face, even with all the decomposition, a facial ID is not forensic identification. He said you have to do it by fingerprints, DNA, or dental records. I mean, I'm sorry, but this whole report put out by Nevada and Placer counties is a complete joke. A complete joke. Now, another thing that's missing from the report is the examination of the brain to see if there's evidence of blunt force trauma. So, if there was a head injury, they didn't even check for that. Now, if there was death as a result of strangulation, the discoloration of the skin in all that time in the water would make that pretty much impossible to see after 2 weeks. And it's also too easy to say she died from lack of oxygen or dry drowning or whatever it is and cover up the fact she was strangled, if indeed that was what happened. It's a joke. Now, both DutyRon and Ed Wallace say that the body should have not been cremated until the final cause of death has been determined. And I've been saying that the whole time. It's hinky as crap. Ed said that with NYPD, where he worked, they would not allow the family to cremate the body until after they had finished their investigation and had issued a determination. But yet, in this case, they weren't even close to finishing their... Well, I think they were. I think they'd already decided from the beginning they were going to rule it an accident. They just played the part and acted like they were actually investigating to placate those of us who were claiming foul play. Now, both DutyRon and Ed Wallace talked about how many things were missing from the report. They both wondered if the report that was released is even complete, just simply because there are so many things missing. I would, if I was going to bet on it, I would say, yeah, it's complete, because they didn't bother doing a whole lot of stuff because they didn't take this thing seriously the whole time. They already knew what they were going to rule on it. Now, if you haven't seen this video, when I'm posting in the description, you really need to watch it. At least the first half hour or so, because to me, that's where the bulk of the really good information is. You know, and they talk about how this report issued is unlike any report they've ever seen. They've never seen anything like this. I mean, this whole case, isn't that what this whole case has been? It's like, we're all saying, we never seen anything like this. I've had numerous people ask me, in your years of law enforcement, have you ever seen anything like this? And my response is pretty much always the same. No, not even remotely close. Now, if she entered the water driving, if this was indeed an accident, as they claim, and she panicked as she headed toward the back looking for an air pocket, and considering with the two windows down, according to Jared with AWP, he said that her CRV would have filled with water in 20 to 30 seconds, with the passenger window down and the back driver's side window being halfway down. Now, as hard as it is to get to that cargo area in the car, even as small as she was, she'd have been gulping water getting back to that air pocket, because that car would have filled up so quick. I mean, how long do you figure, let's say that she was in the driver's seat and she's trying to get her seatbelt, panicking, trying to get her seatbelt even undone. That in itself would take more than 20 seconds. That's my opinion anyway. Because you see that water pouring in there, you're panicking. You know how it is when you're panicking, you're trying to do something, and things that sometimes that are normally easy to do, not quite as easy to do when you're panicking. But she'd have been gulping water on the way back down there, and there would have been water in her stomach. So again, it is impossible for this to be an accidental drowning. And all I can say is anyone who believes it is doing it solely based on their own emotions and misbeliefs rather than the evidence at hand. Also, something important that Ed points out, that in the beginning of the report, when it says that the case is pending investigation, he points out that this is stated at the scene, while her body is still there and prior to the autopsy and pathology findings. So, as Ed points out, it does not mean that they are still investigating this. And if it was still being investigated, they would not have come out with the ruling that it was determined to be an accident or accidental drowning. That I know for a fact. It's just not the way it's done. Folks, they're done with this. I know that there are some who are saying for us to wait as there is still a pending investigation. No. That's not the case. The notation of pending investigation was preliminary at the scene, not the final ruling. The final ruling is accidental drowning, no evidence of foul play. Also, the report says no scars, marks, or tattoos, which we know isn't the case. Kiely had a tattoo 17 on her ribs. So, either they did not examine the body thoroughly, or they lied. For whatever reason. Either way, they fumbled the ball completely on this autopsy. Also, it says that the family physician was unknown. Again, they could have made one phone call and found out who both the dentist and doctor were. I mean, seriously? Really? And you expect us to believe that this was a thorough investigation? And you base your ruling on such a sketchy autopsy and pathology? Folks, I don't care what anybody says. This was either a cover-up or they are the most incompetent group of law enforcement and medical examiners I have ever seen. By far. It's not even a close second. All right, what I want to show you next, it's an email I received from someone I've been corresponding with and has provided me with a lot of detailed information about the fire cameras as well as other particulars in the case. I very much trust his judgment and insight and wanted to share with you what he sent me. And as a side note, he has given me permission to use what he's given me. He just wants me to keep his identity private, which I promised that I would do. Here is the email. Hi, Kevin. I watched DutyRon last night, and he and Ed Wallace went over Kiely's autopsy. Based on theirs and my analysis of the report, it is seriously flawed. No estimate time of death. Yeah, they made the time of death as when they recovered it, which is normal, but you also give an estimated, they always give an estimated time of death. There was none of that. Coroner's investigator who recovered the body says identification via facial recognition was impossible because of decomposition. Excuse me. Kiely was identified at the autopsy by a sheriff's deputy via her facial features. Formal autopsy identification must be via fingerprints, dental records, or DNA. Same thing Ed Wallace said. Height and weight are wrong. No photographs taken at crime scene either by the divers or by coroner's investigator. The tox screens were done by an outside lab located in Philadelphia and may be the only factual part of the report. She tested positive for ethanol, just over legal limit at 0.88, but a note applied by the lab states that most of this will be from decomposition, which means that Kiely was not drunk. Or did not, because of drunkenness, take a mistaken turn. Caffeine, coffee, tea, or Coca-Cola. Nicotine, could be cigarette or vape. THC, cannabis, sometime in the month before death, legal in California. Numerous other drugs were tested for, including cocaine and opioids, all of which there was no trace. Now, that's the only one that, unless I heard wrong, Ed Wallace, in looking at the report, said that there may be traces of cocaine, but I'd have to go back and watch it again. But you can watch the video for yourself and see what he says. Okay, no water in lungs or stomach. No alcohol or edibles in her stomach. Only sample sent to lab is liver. Ed Wallace says it's normal to send liver, brain, blood, and vitreous fluid to lab for tox testing. Blood sample checkbox appears to have been whited out. I know DutyRon and Ed Wallace talk about that. Why'd they do that? Good question. Kiely's lungs are nominal weight for her age and size. Ed Wallace says drowning victims, kings are, I think he meant lungs. I think that's a typo. Are typically 3 times their nominal weight. She wasn't pregnant. She should have had pre- and post-mortem injuries due to vehicle hitting water, rolling over, and with decomposing skin being rolled over by recovery divers with enough force to break the mirror, the window, damage the roof, windscreen, door, and front fender. None were observed. She was fully clothed with one shoe and sock off, but near her. Parents were never asked for their medical and dental records, a must before any autopsy. Which I 100% agree on that. That's normal. That would be the normal thing to do. To go in there and say, we don't know who the dentist is, we don't know who the doctor is. Yeah. Report is only partial, not a complete report. A complete report must include autopsy photographs, even if redacted. So Kiely was neither drunk or drugged, and there is no evidence of drowning. In my humble opinion, she was dead when the vehicle went in the water. And you know that's my assessment as well. That's the only conclusion that I can come to based on evidence. Not on my emotional reaction to things, but based on evidence. And I've looked at all the information myself, and I have to conclude that there's a lot of things that were left out of that report. A lot of parts of the examination that they didn't do. That seemed to go along with the rest of the way they've handled this case. I'm sure a lot of you agree with me, if not most of you. And I really hope that DutyRon does the same thing I'm trying to do and gives this information to other law enforcement or government agencies that could do something about it. I sent my old boss in D.C. the link to the DutyRon video with a short synopsis of what the video goes over. And I doubt he has time to watch the whole entire 1 hour, 47-minute video. But I did timestamp some things for him that I thought were really pertinent. I just don't see how anyone can look at this and not see that there were things that aren't done that should have been done. And a total lack of effort doing this autopsy. And the whole investigation, if we want to be honest. I mean, it's one of two things. It's either a cover-up or it is absolute, complete incompetence. Now, anyway, that's all I want to cover today. Also, just want to let everyone know I'm continually contacting people. We've begun to call the news stations in Northern California and sending them a synopsis of the case as well as the link to the video Everyone Counts. There have been some people in my comments asking me to look into some other things in other cases, which I may do at some point. I'm not saying I won't, but at this particular time, I don't want to lose focus or spread myself too thin. Following up on this case and trying to draw attention to it takes up the majority of my time throughout the day. Not to mention, I still need to mow the lawn and take care of things around the house and also go to the grocery store and do laundry. You know the drill. There's other things that I've ignored that I got to get done. Also, another thing to point out so there's no confusion, okay? I made the one community post with the t-shirt simply as satire. Now, absolutely will not create merch, and that was never my intention for posting that. In fact, I think I'm just going to delete it so people don't get the wrong idea. I think it's totally wrong and unethical to be an opportunist and try to profit off of Kiely's death. That's one reason you'll never see me create a super chat or put anything behind a paywall. I just don't feel it's right to make people pay money to be able to contribute or to watch a video. Now, if other people want to do that and that's your thing, whatever. It's not mine. I just don't like it myself. And the thing is, I've already seen people coming out with merch in reference to Kiely's death. Now, let me say this. If they are specifically donating the money to charity and causes along the lines of preventing things like this, I have no problem with that. But if they're doing it and just pocketing the money, I have a real problem with that. I think it's morally unethical to be an opportunist profiting off the death of a young 16-year-old girl. And shame on them if they're doing so. So anyway, I just wanted to let everybody know where I stood on that. They're not going to happen. I wouldn't feel, my conscience wouldn't let me do it. I wouldn't feel right doing that. Anyway, hope this has been informative for you. And I'll post updates in the community tab and or come out with new videos as things develop and I get any more responses and so forth. We're getting a lot of hate because of our stance, but that's okay. Again, I don't deal with trolls. I don't have time to keep defending our opinion when it's not going to change their minds anyway. And you know that. Legit questions I don't mind. And I've had a lot of people ask some really good questions, and I welcome that. Also keep in mind, I've received almost 1,400 comments just on my last video, and I've been trying to respond to as many as I can. So if I haven't acknowledged your comment, just be patient. I'm hoping to respond to all, but if you haven't received a response, it's not because I'm ignoring anybody. It's just, it's a lot to respond to. And that's just, it's just one video. It doesn't even include the hundreds of comments I've been trying to answer on my other videos as well. Alrighty. Take care, folks. I appreciate all the support I've been receiving. Been amazed at it, actually, and it really means a lot. One thing it's proved to me is that there are a whole lot of people on our side of the fence and see this investigation, in quotes, for what it is. In the end, May justice be served. Have a good weekend, everybody.